Sometimes the journey that changes us most doesn't look like a grand adventure. It looks like waiting at airports, holding onto your carry-on and feeling your heart shift while your body moves across time zones. Today's page is about one of those journeys. Hi and welcome back. I'm so glad you are here. If you are new to the series, I'm Gajana, a psychotherapist and lifelong crafter, and this is day 22 of my July Junk Journal Challenge hosted by Leigh at Leigh As. This series has become a kind of gentle, reflective diary made of paper and glue, memories and meaning. I call it slow crafting for the heart. Each video offers a journal page inspired by a short prompt, and along the way I share thoughts from my therapeutic practice and lived experiences, woven in softly like we are sitting at the same table, scissors in hand, tea nearby. And today's prompt is ticket, and I knew immediately which ticket I use, the ones from my recent flight from New Zealand to Germany. I like working with my day-to-day items that I find on the way of my journeys. And the little pouch here was once holding the airplane cutlery, and it will now become a pocket in my journal, and I will add this fussy cut vintage airplane to the page. It's playful and nostalgic and a little symbolic too. There's something deeply personal about travel tickets, I find. They are official, impersonal scraps of paper, but they represent such intimate moments like goodbyes, hellos, nervous anticipation, or exhausted relief. This particular flight carried me across the world to visit my mother. It's the same route I've taken many times, but this year felt different. Maybe because I'm changing, maybe because she is too, or maybe because each visit feels more precious now, like I'm counting something quietly in the background. As I cut and seal the tickets, I think about how often we rush past these small markers of movement. We keep the photos, maybe we write about the feelings, but the ticket stubs, we throw them away. They're seen as disposable, temporary, and yet these scraps contain proof of a journey, of time that passed, of love that kept going even when the body was tired. Sometimes it's the smallest things that remind us, you were there, you went, you showed up. And I wonder how many parts of our lives are like that, passed through quickly, unceremoniously, but layered with meaning if we stop to look. These tickets might not be art in the traditional sense, but when I collage them into this page, I'm saying this mattered. This moment mattered, not because it was dramatic or glamorous, but because it was real, because it was mine, and because it asked something of me, and I said yes. And in previous times, they faded. So this time I'm using my Mod Podge to seal them. And here they are, and something curious happened. Can you see this? The left side tickets, they are from the start of my journey, and they are clear, they didn't fade. But the right side, look, they already faded with the Mod Podge. A different printing system, I guess. I backed one of them with coffee dyed paper, and the other I leave like how it is originally, and I will keep them in a pocket. I will put these ones to the side. And here is my cutlery pouch or my cutlery sleeve, and I wanted to become a home for these tickets, but also symbolically a way of catching the things that might otherwise be thrown away. In therapy, we often speak about catching experiences or feelings that were overlooked, especially quiet ones. Moments that didn't seem to matter at the time, but which held quiet truths about who we are or what we needed or how we felt in a certain situation. That's what this pocket feels like, a holding space. Because sometimes those are the moments that shape us the most, like the tone in someone's voice when they said your name, the pause before a goodbye, or the way your body felt right before you said yes or no. Moments that didn't seem to matter at the time, but which held quite truths about who we were, what we needed, or what we longed for. And this page is not just holding paper and glue, but memories, meaning, soft in-between parts of a story that don't make it into a photo album, but still live inside of us somewhere. I think about how many of us were raised to ignore or dismiss these quiet things, the crumbs, the scraps. To only honor the big achievements, the loud emotions, the well-framed memories. But so much healing begins in the quiet, in the small act of noticing, in catching ourselves mid-thought and asking gently, wait, what just happened there? Sometimes I imagine therapy as a little pocket like this, a place where something tossed aside can be received with care, where a client says, oh, it wasn't a big deal really, and I get to say, maybe not, but let's look at it anyway. Because in that not a big deal thing, there's often a little thread, a tug, a whisper of something that was never given room to breathe. And maybe junk journaling is a kind of pocket too, a practice of catching what would otherwise be lost, not just memories, but sensations, glimmers, thoughts that visit briefly and then float away. And this cutlery pouch might look plain. It's creased from travel, slightly torn at the edge, but it's a witness. It held the tools I used to feed myself when I was suspended in the sky, somewhere between one version of myself and the next. And now it gets to hold something else. Quite traces of a journey, not just the miles traveled, but the shift that happened along the way. The version of me who boarded the plane feeling worn out, little folded in on myself, carrying the weight of too many goodbyes, and the version who returned, not fixed, but softened, a little steadier, a little more gathered, as if some scattered parts had found their way back in. So I glue it down, not just because it fits the aesthetic, but because it carries something worth keeping. It reminds me that even the most ordinary containers can become precious if we choose to treat them that way. And saying, this matters, you matter, let's not throw that away. And I would like to add a fussy cut vintage airplane to the page. As I said, it's playful, nostalgic, and a little symbolic too for me. Because when I look at this page, I'm not just seeing a flight, I'm seeing a bridge between my past and my present. There's a deep thread connecting my great-grandfather, my grandfather who I talked about in the last videos, to my mother and now to me. Each of us shaped by our own circumstances, each of us carrying parts of the other. My mother is becoming more physically frail, but her mind remains strong and bright. And that contrast really struck me during this trip. The strength of presence even in a more delicate body. The resilience of a person who's lived through wars, relocation, parenting, caregiving, and now letting go of more and more each year. Being with her reminded me how many kinds of journeys we take. Some are measured in miles, others in memories. And that got me thinking. Sometimes our growth doesn't show up as something brand new. It shows up as a return to something familiar, but with new eyes. Like noticing how you've changed because of how you now respond to the same old family story. Or how you now value quiet connections more than loud celebration. That's what inspired today's quote. Not all tickets take you somewhere new. Some bring you closer to who you already are. There's this myth that transformation always looks dramatic, that healing must be a big bang, a breakthrough, a brand new destination. But sometimes it's just a flight to a familiar city, a visit to your mom. Sometimes it's not a new self you are becoming, but a deeper homecoming to your own essence, to the parts of you that feel truest when you are not performing. The parts that wake up not in spite of the ordinary, but because of it. Maybe you've had one of those journeys recently too, one where nothing looked different on the outside, but inside something shifted. You softened, you forgave, you saw more clearly, or you finally gave yourself permission to rest, to stop chasing, to simply be. We don't always need to book a ticket to reinvent ourselves. Sometimes the travel we need is inward. Sometimes it's a return. So if you are feeling like you haven't gone far or haven't done enough lately, pause, look again. Look for the pages you've already filled, the quiet wins, the invisible choices, the miles your heart has traveled when no one was watching. The inner resilience you build in silence. That counts too, more than most people will ever know. And maybe, just maybe, there's something to be said for letting the page hold what we often don't say out loud. The griefs that feel too small to mention. The pride we feel but don't know how to name. The tenderness that doesn't fit neatly into a sentence. And I think maybe that's why we craft, why we keep scraps, not because we are sentimental, but because we are paying attention, because we know that sometimes the soul speaks through scissors and glue, through coffee-dyed paper and a half-finished tag. Thanks for being here with me today. I know these videos are slower than most, but maybe that's the point, a little creative pause in the middle of everything. If this resonated with you, feel free to leave a comment or share your own story below. And if you'd like, I'd love for you to subscribe. Until next time, keep crafting, keep reflecting, and keep returning to the you underneath it all.